you do shamanic practices. What is that? How did you get into it?
Oh,
And why do you do it?
yeah, what a question. What a question. Yeah, so I've always had a deep interest ever since I was a child in Indigenous wisdom. Indigenous wisdom, Indigenous teaching, and I've just found it fascinating. And I can't really tell you where from, because none of my family or friends or even relatives have have this kind of have interest. But ever since I was a child, I always knew that you could speak to the rocks, you could speak to the waters, you could speak to the wind, and I lost it for a while when I kind of became a teenager, and you kind of get interested in other things, or you kind of feel a little bit weird, because when you say to your friends, guys, like there used to be down where I used to live as a kid, there's a place called the Sandhills. I'm like, guys, let's go down the Sandhills and like talk to the rocks. And everybody like that, yeah, what island? Nobody does that. And so I just kind of like, okay, let's just quieten that little bit a bit. But it really was like a story in my life where I always kind of followed this practice of, I guess, earth-based teachings of I'm just a part, I am just a vibration in the vibration of the cosmos, the collective. I'm connected to everything. Like I just understood that at a young age. And then when I was doing my PhD, I contacted a shaman in California called Medicine Grizzly Bear, or Bobby Lake Tom as he's known. So I did like a little bit of correspondence with him. And really, although I kind of did a little bit of this practice myself, I still didn't really get my life. I still was very, I was doing a PhD, but I was miserable. I was really stressed, really like, I'm not good enough, this whole thing that so many of us have, right? Like we just believe that there is something inherently wrong with us, and it's just not true. And then, but because I was at a time where I believed that, I unconsciously through my vibration looked for evidence that would tell me I'm not good enough. And so that's why I ended up being in an abusive relationship, and Tunky was in that situation, and I got to a point in my life when I'm just like, do you know what, I'm done. I'm exhausted. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. I'm just done. And I was gonna take my own life, and I didn't because of Tunkasila. I was like, wow, I don't actually know what her fate's going to be, and I cannot put that on her. So thank you, Spirit of Tunkasila, to coming into my life to keep me to make me do what I do now.
Yes.
But there was this beautiful woodland that I used to visit every day, and there was this tree. How the tree grew out of the ground. It, rather than going up straight, it kind of came out at an angle so it would bend, and I'd sit on this tree, and it would just naturally bounce just as it held my weight. And I used to get so much comfort from that. And I was just sat on this tree, and I was just bawling my eyes out, like snot, tears, like, "Wah." And I heard the words, "You are enough." And I was mortified because I thought there was a farmer stood behind me just watching me, like, oh, there's a crazy lady crying on a tree. And I was mortified, and I remember looking around, and I'm like, okay, there's nobody there, but I definitely heard something. And I heard it again. I just heard the words, "You are enough." And I'm like, it's the tree. It's the tree, like, literally just said those words. And so I just kind of there and then was like, okay, I've kind of read as many books as I can of this kind of indigenous wisdom, this an indigenous way of living, of being connected to the land, of being connected to nature. But I just still didn't get it. I needed to go deeper, and so I've been doing it for 9 years now, of just really exploring the fact that everything that is alive has a spirit. So our dogs also have they don't also have a spirit, they are spirit. That's the reality. We are all spirit having a physical experience right now. And so some of us are very old spirits that have been many things and will be many things. Some of us are younger spirits that have maybe been a few things, or maybe it's our first time kind of being incarnated into a physical body. And so this is why I also love to look at from a canine wellness perspective and a coexistence perspective with our dogs, because it's like, we assume or get conditioned to go, we have chosen the dog, we have decided the dog lives with us, therefore these are the rules and the conditioning and the way that we expect our dog to be. And I go, okay, on a physical level, that's something we can look at from a place of mutual respect and coexistence. But also, you are a spirit and your dog is a spirit, so you also are here having a spiritual experience, which means you're meant to be together having these experiences, which means your dog is also here as a spirit messenger for you to learn about yourself. And that's what I really love to explore, like you said before, this need to maybe some of the professionals or maybe a dog guardian is like, I need to fix, the dog needs to be fixed, like I just want the dog to be fixed. And first of all, I'm like that, okay, well, tell me what you mean by that. And secondly, is it not because you're so desperate to fix yourself, but it's too painful to even go there, or you don't even know how, that you're putting this fixation on the dog needing to be fixed? So therefore the dog then shows up as this reflection, as this trigger. What is it that is in the dog that is a trigger for you about yourself? Why has this dog come into your life to learn the lessons that you need to learn? And also therefore with that, there is that element of, if I'm working with dogs, one of the protocols I look at is to go, do you know what, maybe we need to do a soul session for the dog here first and foremost. Before we look at the dog's behaviour, before we look at how we support the dog, I want to actually do a soul session in ceremony to see what the dog's soul wants to share with me. I did a soul session for a cat actually yesterday. The cat needed a soul retrieval. So sometimes these behaviours that our dog exhibits, these challenges we see in our dogs, are because there is a soul challenge, a soul malnourishment, as I call it, because it's looking at our dogs. Everything that is living needs to be nourished physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually, and whilst we're getting much better at the physical, mental and emotional side of nourishment, we are still not looking at the spiritual side enough from my perspective, because there's an element of like, we don't get it, or it's just a whole lot of judgment on it, or we just whisper about it. But from a science perspective, like, looking at the soul, looking at the spirit, looking at Indigenous wisdom, it's molecular biology, it's quantum physics, so there is a science behind it. And looking at like, wow, everything is a pulsation, everything is a vibration. So like, going back to the example we talked about dogs being scared of people, I've done a soul retrieval on Tunkasila for the abuse she had when we were in that abusive relationship. The soul retrieval, and this is my ego, a lesson from my ego, I assumed I'm going to give Tunkasila a soul retrieval and she's going to be like, ta-da, she's going to be the best of friends with everything. That was a lesson for my ego to learn, because she still has those triggers within her. But the biggest difference that soul retrieval created was her ability to recover. It would take her 3 or 4 days to recover from a trigger. Now it can be 10 minutes. Now it can be like, okay, well, it bothered me, but it's gone past, let's carry on with our day. That was a huge difference for me. And I will say with that as well, what's made a massive difference for her and also for my clients as well, is from talking from my perspective, is when I've worked on myself, when I've gone like, oh, do you know what, this has got nothing to do with Tunkasila and a lot to do with me. And once I took away like the judgment of myself, the judgment of like, oh, I bet people are laughing at me because I'm supposed to work with dogs and yet I've got a dog that kind of struggles to cope at particular times. I bet people laugh at me, think I'm not good enough, or I don't feel good enough. As soon as I just went, where is all this coming from? And it's not even coming from Tunkasila. She was showing up to go, hey missus, this is exactly what you need to heal from. And now, I mean, Tunkasila is taking me on this beautiful spiritual journey where, like, I do soul shares with her. I literally sit down with her in a ceremony and go, sweetheart, what do you want to share to the collective consciousness of humans? What do you want me to share to the humans that are ready to hear this? And she speaks and I write and I put it on my social media. But I do the same thing with the soul sessions for dogs that I've never met before. Of like, you know, this could just be a behavioural thing. It could be a nutritional thing. But your dog is also a soul, and first and foremost, your dog is a soul having an experience as that canine at that moment in time. So let's explore your dog's soul for its own wellness. And so for me, if we are striving for our dogs to have their best life, we have to look at the spirit that they are. We have to look at the spirit that we are, and also the spirit message and the spiritual coexistence that we're having as these two physical beings in this life right now.
Wow, what a journey. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, first of all, I wanted to ask you, so your dog also experienced physical abuse during the time that you were also experiencing?
Yeah.
So, wow. And the other thing that I wanted, and I see, for those who are not seeing and just listening, she has a drum set on the back beside her. So what is Indigenous drumming? What does that, how does it work? How does that
do you know, I love So I kind of talk about, and I also have I have a group in a very, very, very short course. It's just called Indigenous Drumming for You and Your Dog. And I love, like I said before, because words hold a vibration, and often with that they can hold a meaning or an expectation. When we simply become tone, when we become sound ourselves. So I mean, God, you could use tuning forks, you can use singing bowls, you can use your own voice, which is what I do in a soul session for a dog. But I am really attuned to the Indigenous drum, also known as the shaman's drum. And there is actually scientific studies looking at physiological and psychological health benefits by listening to the shaman's drum or listening to drumming. And how it works is basically it changes your brainwave activity. It places you in an altered state of consciousness. Now, because we are vibration and frequency, everything is vibration and frequency, so are our dogs. So I've worked with dogs that are really scared of noise, are really scared of sound. As soon as they hear that drum, you can almost see them go into this kind of hypnotic state. They will do that on their own accord, but of course when they're doing it with their guardian, they're like, wow, mom, dad are really relaxed. That means that they feel really safe. I also feel really safe. I can really chill out. And so it's a beautiful, like, I do a lot of work with myself, with my teachings of having a silent communication with your dog. Stop thinking, stop speaking, stop doing, just be. Because that's really where we should all be coming from. Like for me, I put an awful lot of effort on present moment, just being in the present, and that's what our dogs teach us, right? Like that's where we are consumed by it when we live with them, when we coexist with them. It's like, wow, every moment they tell us, just be in the moment, just be present, and for most of us we're not. So there are different ways that we can use the drum. If it's for ourselves, then it can place us in an altered state of consciousness where we can receive information. It might be, wow, as we are totally switching off from our mind and our brain, we are allowing our spirit, our soul to step forward and give us information of what it is we need. But also from this perspective of very, very, very ancient teachings, very old sacred teachings of, as we go into an altered state of consciousness, we journey and we move it's almost like our physical body can't go very far. Our physical body basically is where it is physically, but our spirit can go wherever it wants to go, whether it's in a journey, whether it's in a dream time, whether it's in imagination. So as we go into this altered state of consciousness, we change our brainwave activity, and we are then having a spiritual experience, and our spirit is taking us to a different place. So you can journey to the upper world to meet an ancestor, meet a relative, meet a spirit guide. Tomorrow night, for example, every Wednesday night I hold a journeying group. So we all meet, I give people an intention, and whether we're journeying to the upper world to meet our spirit guide, to receive guidance, to receive healing, to receive information, to receive clarity, maybe it's like, I don't even know tonight. Well, let's just see what our guides have for us. Or we can journey to the lower world, again, to be with nature, to go to a plant ally, or to meet a plant spirit, but to meet our power animals, and or to have a spirit animal message. And so our power animals they're in spirit form, but they also hold a representation of who we are. The qualities that are in them are the qualities that are in with us as well. And it's really interesting, again, from the human and that ego that often shines through of like, oh, I now want to talk about my power animals, but it's a very sacred thing. It's like, wow, if it feels right, then do so. But if you're doing it to just kind of show off a little bit or feel good about yourself, then actually pause and look deeper like that. Well, why do I need to show off? Why do I even need to talk about them? Because it's really sacred. So I do shamanic drumming and journeying for humans, just for humans, but I also do it for humans and the dogs. It places the dogs in I do it daily for my dogs, where together we're just in my medicine room, and either I'll put on a drumming track myself if I want to journey with them, or I'll just drum for my dogs. And it's the repetitive beat, that repetitive rhythm that changes, again, the vibration. It supports the changing of the brain activity of that dog as well, and therefore its breath. Because what we need to understand, even with how we breathe, breath also influences our nervous system. So every time we breathe in every time we breathe in, that places us in the sympathetic nervous system just a little bit, that nervous system where we're under a bit of duress. When we breathe out, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system just a little bit. So even when we start to imagine like, I'm getting really stressed and getting really panicked, our breathing unconsciously changes, but that also affects our nervous system. So as we start to go into this altered state, we start to tune into the beat of the drum. That can also change our breath. The breath influences our nervous system, influences tension in the body, influences our brainwave activity. And because our dogs are vibration and frequency, they are affected by how we are, then that also starts to change them. But equally, the drum in its own right can start to influence the vibration of that the dog wants to reset back into as well.
Amazing, interesting. Do you think at the end of this conversation we can have a sample of drumming for a few minutes?
Yeah, I would love to.
Nice, thank you. So stay tuned. I want you to talk about movement.
Yeah.
We call it exercise, can you share your perspective about movement and exercise?
Yeah, wow. It's funny when you say movement, because for me, movement again is like different layers. So first and foremost, when I think of movement, I'm looking at like, what is your dog as a cellular being and how is its energy moving? Because again, this is, as from a physical perspective, we get so focused on, is my dog physically well? Is my dog physically clean? Like I say to people all the time, like we clean ourselves daily, we physically clean ourselves daily. But are we cleaning ourselves daily in terms of the energy cleansing that we need to do, our psychic cleansing? And actually, half the time, we wait until something is so ingrained into us, our dogs, and then we try to do something about it, rather than going, do you know what, daily, I'm going to do a little, I don't really call it a sweep down, but that's the word that's coming to me right now. But I do a little bit of energy clearing and cleansing on my dogs. I do it on myself as well, because throughout the day, things get attached to us, just like dust gets built upon a shelf. Someone might walk past us and our dog and go, oh, what an ugly looking dog, just in their thoughts, but that is sent towards us as an energy, so that can affect our dog as it can affect us. So it's like, let's just get rid of those things. So yeah, movement for me is first and foremost of like, okay, how is my dog's energy moving? How is my dog's energy flowing? Am I aware of any stagnation, anything that might need to be lifted or removed? Then movement is again, what is my dog's breath like? How is my dog communicating to me through its breath? Is it really super stressed out during the day? Is it stressed out right now? Like, is it having long periods of rest like our dog should have? How am I communicating to my dog and learning about my dog and our relationship through movement as the way of breath? Then movement, yes, then becomes exercise. And one of the things, like, so depends on what your terminology is for a trainer, I guess, in that sense. And I am not a trainer, because there's certain things that I just don't teach. I don't teach. And one of the things is, yes, then thinking about movement. We've talked about choice, we've talked about free will, is, yes, I don't want my dogs pulling my shoulder out of its socket by pulling me down, like, halfway down the street while they're on lead. But I actually don't care, as long as my dog has, like, is comfortable on the lead and there isn't pulling. I don't care where my dog wants to be. I don't care if they want to be in front of me or behind me or to the side. And certainly from that perspective of like teaching our dogs or expecting our dogs to be right by our side all the time, that's a big ask, and there's actually a lot of pressure on the physical body for a dog. The dog's skeletal system is, as a canine, yes, if they're off on a hunt, they may kind of do that heel work if they're off on a hunt, because there's kind of this information of how, almost like how I see it as a flock of birds. When they're on a hunt and they're that aligned and that tight knitted together, they're moving like a flock of birds. But if they're roaming, exercising, having freedom, like if you watch canines move naturally, if you watch street dogs, even just your own dog, as humans we tend to walk in a straight line. That's how we are made as our skeletal system. Dogs naturally are seekers, are foragers, are searchers. They're supposed to move and meander like a river, not in a straight line. So that movement for me is then what freedom are we giving our dogs to move, from that sense. And yeah, then in exercise for me, it's always about a balance. So I mean, there are some situations, for example, with Tunkasila, it's very, very rare for her to have off-lead exercise because of trauma. Her physical body's response is, there's something over there now that I don't like. Rather than running away, I'm going to get it before it gets me. So I can't I can't risk that in her. I can't risk that in another dog. That's unfair. So she normally is on a very, very, very long line, and I just take her out to the country. But there is also this compromise of exercise itself, where for me, I focus a lot more on relationship of how does your dog feel around you? How do you feel around your dog? Are you putting in periods of calm and rest? And is that true periods of calm and rest? And what is that exercise? So for my dogs, we tend to have majority of our exercise and walks, well, actually tends to be walks of like, it's almost like meditative walking, mindful walking. We are out, you do your thing. If you want to stand and sniff for 20 minutes, you stand and sniff for 20 minutes. That's absolutely fine. We're going to sit under a tree. We're going to sit on a rock. We are just going to meander and walk slowly. And then once a week or maybe twice a week, now we're going to have a sudden burst of exercise. We might go for a little run. We might go for a little jog. I'm going to take you to a secure field and let you off lead. But when we kind of place our dog under this physical exertion, it's almost like I'll say to people, I've got wolf dogs, and people will say to me like, wow, I bet they need a lot of exercise. And I'm like, that maybe a lot of stimulation, but actually not a lot of exercise. And they look at you as if like, I'm just gonna bring the RSPCA moment. Like they think you're being cruel to your dog. And one of the things that I promote for my dogs and for my clients is saying, do you know what? Give your dog a missed walk day today. And the look of horror on their face, they're like, a what? I'm like, I missed what, just don't walk your dog today. And they're like, am I allowed? Like as if they're going to get into trouble. I'm like, of course you're allowed. It is so supportive for your dog for so many reasons. Because I say, like the example I go back to having wolf dogs, if I walk my dogs for 2 hours a day, then in 3 weeks time they're going to need a walk for 2.5 hours, and then another 3 weeks time they're going to need a walk for 3 hours, and it's going to get to a point where I can't work because I'm having to walk my dogs. It's a little bit like I go to the gym, and the stronger that I get with the weights, I've got to add more weights on, otherwise I'm just like, well, it just feels nothing now. It feels really, really light. Right. That's the same principle with the dogs. If we're just physically exercising them, we are turning them into athletes, but we haven't got a dog for a competing sport or for a sport. We've got them as a companion animal, or the work that I do, the way that I work with dogs. So there's this balance with the exercise. Like I think people again look at the romance, or I don't know, it's almost like this unwritten conditioning or idea of, oh, my dog is a hunter, is a predator. It should be out in the woods every day running for at least 3 hours. Like when I work with the captive wolves, arguably they're a captive, or when I've kind of watched what I've watched with your wildlife documentaries of, yes, there is sudden fast movement when there is a hunt, but a lot of the time it's rest. It's a little bit of sniffing, a little bit of foraging. A lot of the time it's rest, and that's what our canine bodies need. Not our canine bodies, the body of our dogs, of our canines need, is, for me, so much more rest than often what we as dog guardians are aware of. But then also, what is that exercise? Like allowing a dog to sniff, allowing a dog to have scent work on whatever capacity that is for half an hour is going to tire them out more than a 2-hour walk, a 3-hour walk. And really bringing in, often what can happen is we can be in a situation where we're like, right, I've got 40 minutes before work, I've got 40 minutes to walk the dog, I've got to get my things ready, right, quick 40 minutes, right, dog's out, come on, right, quick, no, I haven't got time to sniff, come on, right, well, come on, you've just been sniffing that, let's move on, right, quick, come on, right, guys, fantastic, we're home, I'm going to have a quick slice of toast before I go off to work. And like that's when we rest, and the dogs go, oh, thank God, we can now actually rest as well. Or the dogs can just feel like, wow, my guardian just tells me outside is a place to be hyper aroused in, to be feel threatened in, or when we're then in the house because the guardian isn't settled. So I really like looking at exercise, but short periods of bursts of exercise. Or yeah, if you're a runner, then go out with your dog on a weekend, like on a Saturday or Sunday. But running with your dog every day is it's again changing the dog's vibration, also conditioning the dog's body to what the dog should be doing, is also a huge physical impact for the dog. They shouldn't be running every day. It might be like, oh, my dog's young, my dog's 2, my dog's 3, like he can run every day. When your dog is 7, 8 years old, that's when we're seeing huge problems in dog skeletal systems around that age because they've been over exercised. When a dog is 7 to 8 years old, I mean, it breaks my heart that that's the age now that dogs are classed as senior dogs. that's a dog in its prime. It's not a senior dog. A dog should be senior at like 10, 11, 12, maybe even older, but not 7 or 8. So really thinking ahead, thinking about, wow, my dog is a young dog, but how is this going to impact its skeletal system, its physical system, by running with it every day or certainly frequently? How is this going to impact my dog's vibration and energy system and cellular system if I'm over exercising, give them too much exertion? Because again, stress is stress. So if a dog is having a great time, it's still stress. The nervous system can't detect, is it negative stress or positive stress? At that time, the nervous system is like, whoa, I'm just aroused right now. I'm like hyper stressed right now, hyper vigilant, hyper aroused, and that can condition the body to have to feel a certain level of arousal all the time. It almost becomes a conditioning, and so that's where sometimes, you know, like it is going to happen in somebody's life where it's got a dog that you can't get the dog out for whatever reason, or you're late coming home from work, or you're late for what, or there's a family emergency, you cannot get your dog out, but your dog's now got a level, it's got a baseline of, normally at some point in my day, this is the level of stimulation I get, this is the level of exercise I get, why am I not having it today? That can make a dog become like anxious, it can make a dog want to destroy, it can make a dog become stressed, it can make a dog freak out. Also, our dogs are social group animals, so what it can teach them is, in order to feel safe around our territorial boundary, I have to create this level of adrenaline in my body before I can relax. And so for me, exercise is not just about, oh, our dog is a physical dog, and as canines that like to run around and do things, let's give them that enjoyment. There's a lot more to understand about what does exercise mean and how it impacts our dog's wellness, physically, mentally, emotionally, and also energetically and spiritually.
Wow. I'm so glad you brought all this up, because that's what I've been preaching all these years to dog owners. And
good.
Yes, and I'm so glad that we're on the same wavelength, actually.
Good.
And as you mentioned, rest is as important as exercise, because many people, they don't practice rest, like with themselves and the dog, and they don't allow the dog to rest as much as it needs. Each individual obviously is different, but the idea of, you know, an animal like wolves living in nature versus dogs who's living with humans in urban setting is different. But what would you say is the similarities and differences? Let's look at the wolf and the dog when it comes to, you know, a day in life.
Oh, day in life. Wow. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is a really good question about that. Whew, where do I start? Yeah, I mean, it's almost like there is this taboo of like, you can't say that wolves are dogs. And I think, I know there are some people that follow me that think that I say that, and I'm like, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm also saying is that there's some really great lessons that we can get from canines, which is what our dogs are. We can get from wild canines, to understand how we support the canine body in the domestic dog that our dogs are. And one of those for me is really looking at our teaching, looking at like we said about rest. Rest is so important for the wolves as a social group, in terms of like, wow, how is everybody feeling today? Is everybody feeling comfortable and confident enough to rest? It's almost like when we look at if we have a young dog, or we've got a rescue dog, and it's like, oh, I've joined dog training classes. We go twice a week, or I've put this little routine together. At 8:00 we do this, and at 10:00 and it's feeding time, and then I'm at work for a little bit, and then when I get home, that's great to have that routine. But I always say, put in a routine as part of that teaching protocol. Rest, like literally, whether I don't care if it's for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, like if you can half an hour, where it's like, do you know what? We do nothing. My brain is off. The TV is off, the phone is off. I am just lying in the same room as my dog. I'm lying in the house. If my dog wants to join me, the dog can, but my dog is absorbing from me that it is okay to rest, that it's safe to rest, that I can rest. And for me, that is so important, which certainly is kind of what the wolves promote. Like, obviously, when there is time to go, we need to go on a hunt today because we're low on food, or there's definitely a herd of deer going to come past soon,
Right.
then we're going to go off on a hunt. And so that's
And
really
how
fast and
often,
active.
how often wolves go for a hunt?
It really varies. Yeah, that's kind of like how long's a piece of string question, because it depends. I mean, it depends on the season. It depends on the size of the group. It depends on. There are some wolf groups that will predominantly eat rabbit, for example, and then maybe go off and get a deer kill at a different time of year. There are some wolves I know in British Columbia. They have like reclassified a population of wolves that predominantly eat fish, rather than going on a big hunt to get like a big animal. There are some wolf groups in a same location where they may have like rabbit, deer, and wild boar, and then the other wolf group, even though they're in a similar area, will just have the deer. So that really kind of depends on the group, like the group size, the season, the habitat, the population density of the prey as well, and that will also vary from season to season.
So when they hunt and eat, they fast for a few days, right?
Yeah, so what we used to do, I was just about to say that when I worked with the captive wolves, we would our wolves were on a feast and famine diet, so they would have a full-on kill. So a whole prey animal would go in, and they would feast on that and forage on that for the day, and there'd be bits of the carcass hanging around. There might be a little bit of hide or a little bit of bone, so then they would like chomp on that for a couple of days. But they might have it would be around every maybe 5 to 6 days. Is that right? Maybe 4 to 5 days they would have like another animal put in. So they would have a feast and famine diet, which is what is true to your wolf group, because they can't go to the supermarket, and they can hold 25%. They can eat 25% of their body weight in a single sitting. So that's what they tend to do. Just like a bit like a snake, I'm going to eat this huge animal and then just allow it to digest. I don't need to eat every day because I've just eaten something big. So that's what they would predominantly do. And yeah, looking at I guess that the similarities and differences, I mean, the differences for me is our dog's mental health. Our dog's mental health, because of our own mental health, really. The confusion that we create in our dogs because of the hard time we give ourselves about how a dog should be, who our dog should be, what our dog should or shouldn't be doing, what our neighbour's dog is doing and our dog isn't, and we really can create a lot of pressure on our dogs as an ecosystem, but therefore really upset them emotionally and mentally. And I really am talking from a place of no blame. I'm not like, oh, you're giving your dog's mental health. This is for me just my whole purpose in life is to teach and to spread this understanding of, I want your dog to have its best life, therefore I want you to have your best life. I used to live in a place that was very, very different to how I live now, so I know what I know what it feels like, and I know how different I am, I know how different my dogs are, and I know how beautiful I see the world even when challenges come. And it's almost like I've been there and I don't want anybody else to be there, because nobody deserves that, including dog guardians, including our dogs. But for me, yeah, one of those differences of being a wolf is wow, we work as a unit with a place of mutual respect and understanding, without this conditioning of you will do as I say when I say it and this is my expectation. So stripping away of just wow, just enjoy being with your dog and what your dog shows up for you to learn, why you are here to teach your dog and what you can teach your dog, and enjoy that relationship, enjoy that exploration and that journey, because that's what it is, rather than giving ourselves this pressure, this deadline of oh, my dog should have achieved this by then and my dog should have achieved this by then. And often even with our competing dogs, some dogs love to compete. Some dogs are placed in a competition setting because of the guardian. The guardian, again, is just I have this desire, this need to fulfill a validation of why I should feel good about myself by competing. So it's, yeah, for me, we are kind of putting a lot of mental pressure on our dogs, which is creating then as humans, we have our own way of discharging that mental pressure. Dogs have their own way as a canine of how to discharge that mental pressure, and often I mean, their behaviour, there's always a message in that behaviour, just often we're not seeing it or understanding it clearly enough to go, I'm doing this because I'm really anxious, I'm doing this because I'm frustrated, I'm doing this because I actually don't know what you want from me, I'm doing this because you're stressed out, therefore I'm stressed out, I'm doing this because I just want you to stop so I can stop as well. Yeah, but kind of getting more into the similarities and differences is like, I mean, that's kind of a talk in itself, I suppose. Yeah, and I know that I talked about this last time, but just going back into presence, I mean, our dogs are genetically, yes, they're a domestic animal, but they're a genetically ancient canine living in a modern day life. And so everything from humping to digging to mouthing to caching, I mean, they're all things that wolves do. They're all things that our dogs do because they're a canine, and there is an understanding and a meaning and purpose behind all those things. Yeah, for me, it's that circle. It's not just one thing, and this is. I mean, I often joke and say like, oh, I bet you wish you got a goldfish now. But I'm like, they have a wellness, they still need to, their wellness needs to be looked at. They're still an ecosystem. But yeah, for me, it's like, okay, we are starting the day understanding, okay, my dog is vibration and frequency. And again, my dog is an ecosystem. And how disturbed is the ecosystem? Think about it as a terrain. So is there, is there a little bit of a volcano in the dog's skin? Is there a little bit of thirst in the dog's mouth? Like, what does my dog's ecosystem look like physically, and if we can, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? And then there's no rhyme or reason. I think, like people will say to me when I say, give your dog do miss walks, give your dog a day of not walking them. Okay, well, when? Well, just when. Yeah, but should it be a Wednesday? It doesn't matter. Like, they're literally, you're not going to get it wrong. I'm going to invite you to just do it. Yeah, but how many times a week should I do it then? You decide. Like, and particularly if we have a dog that is a stressed out dog, a dog that can take time to recover, I will say then give them at least 2 or 3 days of no exercise, because again, it's additions, right? It's like, it's going to take longer than 24 hours for that stress to come down. So if we're taking the dog out knowing it's going to be triggered again, it hasn't calmed down from that trigger beforehand from the previous day. So sometimes we need to go, okay, well, what happened yesterday to determine what I need to do today. So there's always that, like, if I was, so for tomorrow, if it's for my dog, for taking that as an example, I would be, like, Tunkasida's had a great day. There's been no triggers, no reactions. So we're going to start our day as usual. We're up at 6 a.m. We're out on a walk, which is like kind of like a conscious walk. I'm very much about getting dog guardians to be conscious of themselves, their daily life, and their life with their dog. So it's a conscious walk. How is Tunkasila moving today? Like, Tunkasila really, she knows that she gets to choose her walk and how long she wants to be out for. Today we were out we did 4 miles. Yesterday, the day before, we only did 1.5 miles. Now, she's a 13-year-old dog that has, I don't know if it's arthritis, but definitely she has a slowing down in her back leg. So she knows how much she can cope with at that moment in time on that walk. And it's also one of the benefits of her not having off-lead exercise, because I don't want her to run, because she will be off her legs for a few days if she did overexert. Right. So it starts with like this conscious walking of, I'm not like, oh, we've only got half an hour, quick on, don't sniff that. It's just like, wow, we're out for, this is what time I need to get back, but we are walking slowly, we are meandering, you can stop and sniff. I'm also like looking around, I'm like, not even, do you know, a lot of the time when I'm out, I chant. I just chant. And I don't know, I just feel the surroundings that I'm in. So I'm just conscious of, wow, I'm like connected to the trees, I'm connected to the flowers, I'm connected to Tunkasila. Wow, there's just a massive gust of wind there, I'm connected to the wind, or I can see the birds. So I'm just really being present. I'm not thinking about, I'm not thinking about when I get home I need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, at the moment I'm out. I don't need to think about when I get home, because right now it's me and my dog out on our walk. So really being conscious every day and every moment. But we'll start that with the walk. I'll get home, I'll then feed my dogs, and yes, diet is so important for me. It's nature has this beautiful code. I don't understand why we would interfere with a code. Like, we are a biological organism, feeding food that supports the dog's cells. For me, it's not even about what should I feed my dog today, it's about what should I feed my dog's cells today, because I want to promote cellular health. Right. So food that hasn't been untainted, that's what I want to feed. I don't mind whether it's raw. I mean, I feed a raw food diet. I don't mind if it's freshly cooked. Like, that is and some dogs actually can't have, or they literally cannot tolerate a raw food diet because of how compromised they are. But definitely something that is as far removed from processed as possible, because again, in terms of vibration, things that are processed, they're vibrationally inert, which again can zap our dog's energy as it does ourselves, which we also know from scientific studies. So I feed my dogs. I also am very mindful, again, conscious. I'm not thinking about, oh, I've got to send this email to this stupid person, they really upset me today, while I'm cooking my dog's food, because I'm sending that energy into the food. So I'm cooking this food for my dogs, and I'm playing, like I'll play music. Either I'll sing, or again I'll play music, but music that is quite uplifting or just beautiful. Like just music makes me feel really just beautiful and blessed and full of happiness. And sometimes I'll speak to my dog's food, sometimes I'll do a little symbol over it, sometimes I might just blow into it, because there's an element of I'm feeding raw, like that. I don't know what type of life that prey animal has had. I'm hoping it's a happy and healthy life before it went to slaughter, but there's a reality there as well. So I do that. Then I do my daily practice. So I come to my medicine room. That's when I do my daily practice. My dogs usually join me, but again, they have choice, they have free will. They want to join me, they don't want to join me, that's fine. And then I go about my working day. Again, they're super chilled. The house is again, I'm very, very conscious of my emotional state, my energy. And then on the afternoon, we have a shorter walk, which is again just more conscious. Tunkasila will choose which way she wants to go. Evening meal comes. Then evening, there's always an element of those transferable behaviours. There's always an element of like, do you know what? We're doing a little bit of mammy work now. Like I am now pretending I'm your mother, and so I'm doing breath work. Like when our dogs so beautifully do the. That's like a lot of people think our dogs do that because they're bored, or it's a communication to go, oh, and I feel safe here that I can rest. It's information that they would have received from their mam when they are old enough to not need body temperature regulation from mother, so they're exploring, but mam by that point is normally just so tired from looking after her pups that she's resting, and she's just giving them an update. Kids, I feel safe, I feel relaxed, I feel content. So that with I do a lot of work around the warmth areas. So I know this is a podcast, people can't see what I'm doing, but placing your hands, now this has to be for dogs that you know that you've got this trust in your dog. Don't do it to a dog that maybe you've just rescued, although some dogs will actually take this anyway. But placing your hand just under the armpit, placing your hand just in the groin area, they're classed as warmth areas, the areas that our dogs just relax into, because again, when they were pups and they couldn't regulate their own body temperature, they would lie on their mam. These are areas in our dog's body where there's either no fur or little fur. Oh, it's direct heat exchange. Oh my goodness, that instantly just makes me feel safe and secure. And then I'll imagine that my hand is the mother's tongue, and I'm just grooming around the cheek, the midline of the nose, up the top of the forehead, around the ears. So putting just all this, again, silent communication. I'm not necessarily saying anything. I'm focusing on my emotional state. I'm focusing on being in the heart, being present. And then we might sit in silence for a bit. We might have a little bit of seeking work, like throwing around treats or a scent work. That just then really depends. And then I'll often end by doing just a little bit of energy work, and that can be actually I'm sat reading a book, I'm sat watching one of my box sets, but I'm just doing a little bit of energy work around Tunkasila's body, around Charlie's body. They're just the two dogs that we have at the moment, because your dogs will tell you once your dogs know, my guardian's now doing this and they now understand what it is, they'll tell us, I need it now, this is how long I need it for, and this is where I need it. And so again, this is why I love the work with vibration and frequency, because our dogs don't have any preconceived ideas, they don't have any self-limiting beliefs, they don't have a belief system in that sense. Yes, they can make associations, but they don't have a belief system. They're just like, wow, you're giving me something that my energy body really notices and detects and needs, I'm just going to soak that up. They don't go like, what, you're just going to do this around my body and that's going to make it come off it. And that's why when we have healing work ourselves or energy work done ourselves, it takes us a while to switch off, because we're so stuck in the mind of coming back into the heart, and also we're stuck in a self-limiting belief of like, well, this ain't going to work, and so our mind tells us it's not going to work. and non-human animals don't have that. They just go, yes, I need it. This is how long I need it for. This is where I need it, and now I'm done.
So yeah, definitely. Wow, that was amazing. Actually, the thing that I was going to mention was like if you are excited and create excitement and all go lifestyle, that's what your dog is going to soak in. And
Yeah.
if you create calmness and maybe happiness and positivity, that's what your dog is going to soak in.
Yeah.
Yes,
And don't
thank
get me
you.
wrong, excitement, like, I mean, we definitely wind up our dogs with excitement, like, Grandma, Granddad's coming, or let's get a treat, but it's almost like that is just a part of their protocol.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of calm, there's a lot of, like, it's like, even if, like, Tunkasila knows if she's frightened, she'll come straight to me, and she knows, because I've been doing this since day one, really. I give her warmth. I don't reassure her, like, oh my God, oh, you're okay, oh my goodness, oh, because that can, make the dog feel a little bit more anxious. Come here. What would you've done when you were a puppy and you were scared and you went to your mother? Your mother would have given you the breath, the warmth, and being present. Bang. That's what I'm going to give you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. That's
You're
very
welcome.
important for everybody to realize and learn. And just to touch up on that. Many times when I do consultation or training with people, my advice to them is also focus on maybe 30% physical stimulation and 70% on mental stimulation.
Yeah.
And people say, "What?
Yeah.
Oh, that you're crazy. That's against everything that I've learned." Right? The media and everybody, they say exercise your dog like crazy. And yes, it has very negative effects on our dogs, and I'm glad that you shared that with us.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you to share, how can people work with you? Are you available in person? Are you available virtually? How can people learn about you and all that?
Oh, thank you for asking that. So there's a few things that I offer. So I mean, all my work now is via Zoom. So I kind of have clients Australia, America, Canada, Europe, England. So yeah, it's all done via Zoom, and there is like different things I offer. So because I mean, I am very busy, so I am limited in the one-to-ones that I can do, but I try and provide as much free resources as possible. So, I mean, even like in this podcast that we're doing, but I've got various things like on YouTube. There is a free ebook that people can download that I know, I think that's how you've heard about me anyway, because you downloaded the free ebook. There's a free webinar. And then I have an online course. So my website's kachinacanine.com. So I have an online course that's called Complete Canine Wellness, which kind of is a little bit what we talked about today, but goes into much obviously more detail. It's like 17 hours long. So there's that course, and if you invest in that course, then you get invited to a private Facebook group. You get invited to join the weekly journeying group that I talked about that we do for people, and the monthly Indigenous Drumming for you and your dog group. So that's kind of like the big course, but I have broken down two of those modules. So there is a module called the Canine Wellness Wheel that people can buy as a standalone course. There is a module on canine functional characters, which people can buy as a standalone course as well. I also have a mini course out that's called Indigenous Drumming for you and your dog, if you're just like, oh, I just want to explore this on my own. So they're kind of like the things that people can have access to online. And then in terms of working with me, there's various, I mean, what I prefer is for somebody to have at least done that module on the Canine Wellness Wheel, because it gives people an understanding of, all right, this is who my dog is, this is what it means to have a dog, this is the many factors that shape my dog's an ecosystem as a vibration energy. And there's different then ways that I work with people. So depending on the challenge or the situation, I actually like to start by doing a soul session, or like it's almost like an animal communication, just to see, well, what's happening from the dog's perspective, like what's going on there. Is this like something that is, yeah, just let's get the dog's perspective, or something that I'm like, do you know what, I kind of, if someone says to me, Isla, I've tried all these different things, I've had all these different professionals, and what they've shared with me, what they've done with those professionals, I go, do you know what, that's kind of, there isn't anything incorrect to that way. it might actually be that your dog needs a soul retrieval, or your dog has something in terms of it's spiritually malnourished that we need to explore. So that's one thing that I do. And with that, I also do it for dogs that have already passed, or for dogs that are close to transitioning. It's a slightly different ceremony, but I also do it for dogs that are, because everything is a spirit. So when an animal is close to passing, and it isn't necessarily like days away, it can be months, or it just could be a dog that is slowing down. They are actually really happy to share with us, wow, if possible, this is what I would love around to have as like, I don't know, this is what I would love to have just before I transition or as I'm transitioning. So I do the soul sessions and ceremonies. I also then do like behavioural consultations, or actually they're not just behavioural consultations, like a wellness protocol. We need to understand, like, working holistically, it's not a matter of like, how do I stop this behaviour, or what can we do? It's like, I need to go back as far back as we can, which is hard if we've got a rescue dog, but still as best as we can. And then looking at, like, you know, tell me about your lifestyle, tell me about your children's lifestyle, tell me about your expectations of yourself, tell me about your childhood. So it's really in depth. And then there is also I also work with like, I class it as plant spirit medicine. I work with essential oils and hydrosols. So it might be like, do you know what, let's bring in some subtle aromas to see how that's going to support your dog's body. And sometimes, depending, because these are just because I am limited with time, but I also will try and offer an exploration call when it is just like, do you know what, Isla, I don't even know where to start, I don't even know what to share. I'm like, do you know what, let's just jump on an exploration call. So I'll kind of feel into the conversation and go, right, I feel the best pathway for your dog is to have a soul session first, or to do at least the canine wellness wheel module first, or let's kind of just get you to understand the pressure that you're placing on your dog, because the pressure you're placing on yourself. So I also do those exploration calls as well.
How about energy tests? You mentioned
energy testing. Yeah, it's so funny you talk about that, because I shared that with someone just the other day. I do energy testing. That tends to be so in terms of energy testing, that is something that I talk about in the online course, because for me it is so helpful. It's so helpful, whether we energy test like using ourselves, whether we do energy tests as a surrogate, so where you have two people, or where you energy test using a pendulum. It's just like, you can use it for, like, in terms of what you feed your dog, in terms of the supplements you give your dog, even in terms of like the harness that I'm putting on my dog. I mean, is that suitable for my dog today? That you literally can energy test anything and everything. And because it's so hard for people to understand the concept of energy, and it's so hard for us to see it and feel it, that energy testing is, I mean, it's something that I do a lot with my dogs, but it's something that I work a lot with my clients, and is something that I talk about in the online course, because it's not, a lot of people think like, oh, well, you need to be experienced to do it. Like, if you're teaching it, then yes, but this is for you to learn. I mean, for me, it's like, I'm just one person. So if a guardian can do all these things themselves for their dog, that's what I want. And so, yeah, you are, at your heart is a pendulum. So you can do what's called the sway test to energy test. You can do a surrogate test where you and your husband, you and your wife, you and your partner, get your children involved. You just rely on a second person to do that test. Or, as I say, you can use your pendulum. So yeah, that's something that I use quite a lot. Yeah.
That's great. Can we end the show with a taste of your drumming?
Yes.
Just so we have an idea, and also experience it for a few minutes, if you could.
Oh, thank you so much for asking. And I am going to say, like, so when I'm working with my drum, when I'm using my drum, when I'm in relationship with my drum, it's very sacred. So the drum itself also has a spirit. It actually has more than one spirit. And I would normally, when we meet as a group, the space is set up, so I open up the circle, we do a meditation, we really get into the place of honouring the sacred of all of life, and the spirit in and of all things, which we don't have time to do right now. So just holding that as an intention, holding that in my heart, and so speaking to my guides that they have an awareness of this is just a practice. The first thing that I'm going to say is just, I invite everyone that is listening to give yourselves permission to just stop and to land, arrive. I'm not going to do this for very long, so just, put everything down, switch off the telly, turn off the radio, put your phones on to silent, just put them to one side. Do not be distracted by what your dogs are doing, and also do not be distracted by your environment, unless your dog is absolutely desperate to go to the toilet, for example. But in this work, as soon as we start to tap into this vibration in this way, things will start to show up as also a message. So when we do this work, a lot of people expect absolute quiet, absolute silence, and so we can get annoyed when all of a sudden there's, I don't know, someone whistling whilst mowing a lawn or cutting down a tree or whatever. But pay attention to the sounds that are around you and just allow them to blend. And if you do get frustrated, then that is a question, that's a message in itself of, why do you have frustration within you? Why is that making you feel frustrated? So just allow your dog to express, because this is also, your dog is going to be tuning into this. They're going to be expressing in their own way, just as you are going to be expressing in your own way. And just land and arrive just for this moment. It's not going to be long. And come into a state of stillness and silence, so that you can almost hear every one of your cells throughout your body just moving across each other, connecting and talking to each other. So even if there's not necessarily stillness and silence outside of you, within you, coming into a stillness and silence. And I'm not going to do a journey, because that takes longer and it needs support in that way. So this is not asking you to journey, this is just asking you to tune into the rhythm of the drum and see how you feel, notice how you feel. And before we do that, just slowing your breath down. Just noticing where your shoulders are and dropping your shoulders. Opening your mouth and smiling. And just slowing that breath. Just knowing that this is your time and your time only. Giving yourself permission just to stop just for a few moments. Yeah, and so now I'm going to introduce Grandfather Drum. just still, stay perfectly quiet and silent. Just for a moment feeling just how your body feels. And it's always helpful to write anything down if you want to, or just slowly have a stretch, have a drink of water, and yeah, thank you for listening to just a short example of the drum.
Thank you so much. Oh, I mean, we needed this. We all need this. We all need a moment of self-consciousness and being aware of what's going in our mind rather than around us, and just focusing on. Thank you so much for allowing us to take this journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you so much. And is there anything else that I forgot to talk about or mention that you like to end the show with that?
Oh, do you know, I'm not. I can't even remember I ended it with this last time, but I think it's just so important for me to say, like, just because of, I guess, the nature of the work, the people that I meet, just we give our dogs such a hard time, or we can give our dogs such a hard time, because actually deep down we are giving ourselves such a hard time. And just sharing that, like, everyone that's listening, just knowing that you are perfect exactly as you are, and your dogs are perfect exactly as they are as well. So just enjoy the journey. Let go of giving yourselves a hard time. Let go of any expectation or any particular outcome, and look deeper. Really step into that being conscious, almost like being a conscious canine guardian. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very true. Yes, we are individuals who have baggage in our lives, and we have dogs. When we bring dogs, we add additional baggage to our lives. I think, we worry about ourselves, our dogs, and dogs, they're supposed to just enjoy life, but they carry our baggage too. So we're affecting our dogs, our communities, or our world by our own actions. So it's very important to be aware of it and be making those choices that not only make a difference in us but in our dogs, and we can use our dogs as barometers to feel how we're feeling and how we're affecting our surroundings. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and enlighten us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Inform us, educate us, and make us feel that we are special and our dogs are special, and we can be and we can create a better place with everything that we think, emotionally, mentally, and in soul level and microbic level as well.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you so much for inviting me.